Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I have an unboxing for the Shuri and Okoye expansion for Marvel Crisis Protocol from Atomic Mass Games. Let's open up the box and see what's inside. Once you have the box opened, one of the first things you'll probably notice are the Team Tactics cards. Just like all the other expansion sets so far, this set does come with two Team Tactics cards. The first one you see here is Advanced R&D. This is an unaffiliated Team Tactics card. You do have to be active in order to play this. A character may spend up to 5 power to play this card. Choose a number of other allied characters equal to the power spent. Each chosen character gains 1 power. And then the other Team Tactic card is Vibranium Shielding. This grants the player invulnerability. So when this character would suffer damage from an enemy effect, reduce the amount suffered by 1 to a minimum of 1. So this is similar to the Invincible Iron Man superpower that Iron Man has. In order to use this card, you do need to be over 50% Wakanda faction, and you do need to be the active player in order to play this card. Black Panther or Shuri may spend X power to play this card. X must be at least 1 and no more than 5. This round, the character and allied characters, while they are within range X of this character, gain the Invulnerability Innate Superpower. X is equal to the amount of power spent to play this card. And then you have the actual player cards themselves. So this is the one for Shuri. She does have 5 health, medium movement. She is a size 2 and threat level 3. And she has a respectable 3 all across the board for defense against physical attacks, energy attacks, and mystic attacks. For her basic attack, she has the Panther Gauntlets, which is a range 5 attack. She gets to roll 6 dice for this, and it's a free attack basically, so it doesn't cost any power. If this attack would deal 1 or more damage, it deals 1 damage instead. After this attack is resolved, push the target character away small. And after this attack is resolved, this character gains 1 power. So just like in the comics, Shuri really doesn't deal a lot of damage, where the value of this particular power comes into play is really with the push ability here. So it helps with controlling your secure objectives. She also has Sonic Crush, which is a range 2. She gets to roll 7 dice, and it does cost 4 power to play this ability. After this attack is resolved, the target character gains the Stun special condition. In addition to that, if you roll a Wild, that character also gains the Stagger effect as well. For superpowers, she has Super Genius. So when this character is attacking, it may use this superpower during the Calculate Success step of the attack. If it does, it may choose to count defense results instead of hit results as successes. This does cost 1 power to play this. There's also upgrades. This costs X power, so after another allied character within range 4 rolls attack or defense dice, this character may use this superpower. If it does, spend up to 3 power. For each power spent, the allied attacking or defending character may re-roll 1 of their dice. And then there's also the passive ability, Head of Wakanda R&D. Whenever this character rolls dice, after the effect is resolved, it gains 1 power if it rolled at least 1 failure. Okay. So that's something I'm noticing with the Wakanda faction. There's a lot of dice manipulation involved with this particular faction. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Okoye card and see if that trend continues. So here's the card for Okoye. Pretty similar to Shuri. The only real difference is the health. Where Shuri had 5 health, Okoye only has 4. Just like Shuri, she has medium movement, size 2, threat level 2, and 3s across the board for defense. She has the strike ability. So after this attack is resolved, this character gains power equal to the damage dealt. She also has Vibranium Spear Blast. This is a range 4 attack. After this attack, is resolved, this character gains 1 power. And then her last basic attack is Vibranium Spirit Thrust. This is a range 2 attack. She gets to roll 5 dice, and it does cost 4 power to play this particular ability. So on a wild, she gains Pierce, so change one of the defending character's critical, wild, or defensive rolls to a blank. And then also she gains Flurry, so after this attack is resolved, this character may make a strike attack. So that's kind of nice to daisy chain those 2 attacks together there. So basically you're getting 2 attacks for 1 action. Okoye does have the Bodyguard ability. It does cost 2 power to play this. So when another allied character within range 2 of this character is targeted by an attack, this character may use a superpower. This character becomes the target of the attack regardless of range and line of sight. So similar to Captain America's Bodyguard ability. She has 2 passive abilities here. So she is the General of the Dora Milaje. This character may reroll 1 die in its attack or defense rolls. And she also has the Martial Artist ability. So when this character is defending against a physical or energy attack, targeting it from within range 2, this character adds blanks in its defense rolls to its total successes. So those are 2 cards that come with this. Here are the tokens. Alright, so pretty much the same tokens we've seen before. It is nice to get a couple more of the Wakanda faction tokens though. And then you have your instructions for assembling those 2 models. So it starts off with assembling Shuri there. You might notice that there are some parts where you're assembling very small pieces together right here. So you'll notice the very first step is to put the top of Shuri's head or her hair on the rest of her head here. And then once that's done, you'll attach the ponytail to the end of that. So I'm not sure how well that will go. So it's probably going to be pretty interesting assembling these 2 characters. Let's take a quick look here. This step looks like it's the assembly for the her gauntlets. You'll notice that the lower portion of the gauntlet is a separate piece from the rest of the gauntlet there. So that will also be an interesting assembly. The rest of the instructions for Shuri don't look too bad. And then for Okoye, for the majority it doesn't look too bad. I am a little worried about step 6 here. Just aligning the arms with the rest, or sorry, aligning her hands with the arms. Just making sure that it gets aligned just right. So hopefully there are some pegs or holes or something that helps you with the alignment when you're gluing those 2 pieces together. And then you have the actual sprues themselves. Okay, so this is the sprue for Okoye here. Okay, and there's that piece that I'd mentioned before. So you have her hands here, and then the spear. So somehow I'm gonna have to attach that point and that point to the rest of her arm. So that should be an interesting part of that build. And then here is the sprue for Shuri. That looks like one of the 2 gauntlets right there. So you can probably tell they're not super huge. I may have to pull out the tweezers to assemble Shuri here. And there is the ponytail. Yeah, and the part I'm really not looking forward to assembling, this right here looks like it's the bottom portion of the gauntlet. You'll notice there are 4 of them, so there are a couple of extras just in case something happens. If you lose 1 or 2 of them during the assembly process, there are extras here, so at least that part is good. But I'm really not looking forward to attaching that to that there. And then these are the bases that this set comes with. So it does provide you with 2 extra bases, so you do have your option of how you want to base those 2 characters there. Okay, and these are all the same ones that you've seen from the basic core set, I believe, so there are no new bases in this set. Alright, and that's everything in the box. When you come back, I'll show you what the figures look like fully assembled. I'll see you then. Alright, so now that I have both Shuri and Okoye assembled, let's go over a couple of things. So let's take a look at Shuri first. Okay, so this is Shuri fully assembled right here. The sculpt looks really nice. Alright, and as far as assembly goes, to be honest with you, this was not my favorite minifigure to assemble. There were a lot of small finicky pieces, some pieces that could have easily gotten lost, but luckily did not. So I'll point them out as we go along. Alright, so as you saw in the instructions earlier, the top of the head is a separate piece from the actual head itself. That part's not too bad. The part that was a little bit infuriating was the ponytail, actually. The ponytail did not really have a slot that would go into that I could easily see in the back of the head here, so I sort of just had to make my own spot up. And then the other trouble spot, just like I thought, was the panther gauntlets itself. So the jaw of the panther gauntlets, those are super small. So if you do not already own a pair of tweezers, I would highly suggest you purchase a pair before you start assembling Shuri here. I have fairly small hands, and even with my fingers, there was no way I was going to be able to attach the jaws to the gauntlet without the help of tweezers. So definitely make sure you have a pair of tweezers handy when you're assembling her. The other thing to pay attention to is this arm right here, the one that is bent. When you are assembling this arm, make sure that you are dry fitting that. And I don't just mean the panther gauntlet section, I also mean the torso section as well, just to make sure that the arm is oriented in the right way, so it's not upside down when you actually glue the arm to the torso. And then the other part that I had issue with is the head and how it attaches to the torso here. Okay, so to demonstrate, I'm going to pull up the instructions here. Alright, so as you can see in the instruction, on the torso itself, there is a small little nub here. That nub does almost nothing when the head that's supposed to be attached to it is where this bottom section right here where the neck is supposed to be, that is actually what is attached to the sprue. So you actually have to cut that section off in order to take it off from the sprue. So if you don't do it in exactly the right way, there is no way that this is going to match the nub that's on the neck. So basically what I did was I had to shear off the neck section and then just glue it on here. So that nub was basically useless right there. The other part that I've been hearing some people have issues with is how small the ankles are, and as you can see in my figure right here, I'm not too worried about that. It is attached by this base right here, and I've got some pretty strong glue, so I'm not too worried about that falling off. Overall, the figure is gorgeous. I mean, the pose is dynamic, it's just assembling the thing was a pain in the butt. And once again, like I said, the figure itself looks gorgeous. The sculpt is great. It's just I wish some of the pieces would have been a little bit larger and the assembly process was a lot easier. And almost a complete 180 from the Shuri figure is the Okoye figure. This figure I actually enjoyed assembling quite a bit. That's not to say there weren't any trouble spots with this one, but for the most part it was fairly easy to assemble. There were definitely a lot less pieces, and definitely the pieces were a lot larger than the ones on Shuri. So the two legs are separate pieces that you glue together, and then the folds down here, those are actually separate pieces as well. So you have one in the middle right here, and then you have a piece on the side, another one on the side, and one on the back. And then there's a little flap in the front that is attached to the torso section. Just a little bit of advice as far as putting the flaps together. This flap back here on the sprue looks a lot like this flap right here. As long as you pay attention to the other side of that flap, you should be okay. The other side has sort of a nub that goes up and down, and that one goes horizontally, and that fits in the back, whereas the one that's on the side here, that one goes up and down. So as long as you pay attention to that, that really shouldn't be an issue. The only two sort of trouble spots that I had with assembling Okoye, just like with Shuri, is the head to the torso. Once again, in the picture right here, it shows a little bit of a nub where the neck is, but that's basically useless when the neck section right here is where you have to detach it from the sprue. The other part that gave me a little bit of trouble is, just like I predicted, the spear and the two hands. The connection points, those are pretty flat. So there's no peg or groove or anything that slides in there nicely, so you just need to make sure that you glue it on there and hold it until it sticks in the position that you want it to. A little trick when you're doing that is to make sure that you are attaching the arms to the torso at the same time that you're attaching the weapon here to the arms. I found that as I was attaching the arms to the torso, if I pushed this arm right here all the way into the torso, if I were to have let it dry like that before I attached the weapon right here, the hand section itself would not match correctly, because this bottom arm section would be all the way up here, and obviously that would leave a floating arm right here when you try to glue the weapon on. So just something to be aware of when you're doing that assembly. Like I said, overall this was a much more enjoyable assembly experience than assembling Shuri was. So out of the two, as far as assembling goes, like I said before, this is my favorite out of the two. Alright, I'll give this a quick spin so that you can see what she looks like. Okay, and then once again, you can sort of see that gap right there. And once again, that's simply because the where I cut the head off from the sprue, I tried to clean it off as best as I could with a hobby knife, but apparently I didn't do a great job, so there's that little gap in between there. So that little nub that was originally on the bottom of the neck section right here, that really didn't help align the head too much. Okay, so because the head section is kind of flat and the neck is pretty flat, when you're assembling those two pieces, make sure you're paying attention to the character cards or the box so that you can see which way the head's supposed to be facing. Originally, I had the head facing just straight forward this way, which obviously is a little unnatural when you have a weapon facing this way and the rest of the body facing this way as well. So pay attention to where the head alignment is to the rest of the body when you're assembling that. With that said, I think that will be it for right now. When we come back, I'll show you what this looks like fully painted. So here's the finished Shuri figure. One thing to be aware of while you're painting is that because of the way that the figure is attached to the base, mainly through this one connection point right here, at least for me when I was painting the figure, I noticed that there was a lot of shaking and wobbly going on as I was trying to paint. So just be aware of that and be ready to compensate for that movement as you're trying to paint. Out of the two figures, at least for me, she was the less enjoyable to paint just because of all the detail that she has on her. Especially the thin lines, as you can see here, those were kind of difficult to get painted all the way correctly. So as you can see, some of the paint strokes got outside the line there. But after all the frustration of putting her together and getting her painted, I just wanted to finish it as soon as I could. So this is what I ended up with. Overall, I'm fairly happy with the way the figure turned out. The figure does look pretty nice, despite the troubles I had putting it together and finishing the painting. So I'll go ahead and spin this around so that you can see what it looks like. Okay, so that's Shuri. And then next up is Okoye. Okoye I found a lot more enjoyable to paint. She obviously has a lot less fine detail than Shuri did, and I think that helped. I'm not a great painter by any means, so for me it made this painting a lot more enjoyable. One thing to be aware of as you're painting this, I would almost suggest painting all of her body separately and then also her spear and hands separately, and then once all that is painted, then attach the spear to the rest of the body, because once you attach it, it makes painting the back part right here behind the spear really difficult. So that's one thing I wish I would have thought of before I assembled the figure. So just something to be aware of if you have not assembled your Okoye figure yet. Something you can do to make your painting a little bit easier there. Once again, out of the two figures, this was the more enjoyable of the two figures for me to paint. There's enough detail in there that this figure is still interesting to me, but the parts are still big enough where the painting isn't really that difficult. So as you can see, a lot of this was able to be painted in blocks, so there's a lot of blocks of the yellowish there, lots of blocks of red, a little bit of the gray section. So overall, the painting was a little bit more enjoyable for me for the Okoye figure here. So I'll go ahead and spin her around. Okay, and that's it for this unboxing. As always, feel free to leave any questions you have in the comments, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Hit like if you like this button, and if you have not done so yet, please consider subscribing to this channel. And as always, keep on gaming.